we've got a guest. We've got someone coming on, y'all. So one of the things that has been a staple in my life is that one, I meet people everywhere I go, and those people I see them again in life. So it behooves me not to be, um, I would say, a jerk. Yeah, let's say that. Because you never know who you're going to meet and you never know when they're going to come back in your life. But more importantly, I believe everybody comes in your life for a specific reason. Sometimes it could be just to be a passing ship of the night. Sometimes it could be a helping hand. Maybe you're the person that's supposed to help them. But whatever reason, if you meet someone, there's a reason for each time. And so our next guest is someone I actually met out dancing. I'm out on the salsa dance scene. And as you know, for those of you who dance in Boston, being a man of color in the Latin dance scene, you stick out a little bit. Not to say that there aren't many of us, but there aren't a ton of us. Let's put it like that. And so, of course, I saw Jordan dancing on the floor, and I'm like, wow, this guy's got moves. Now, I didn't know that he wasn't from Boston. So it's like, oh, I'm going to be I live in San Diego. Lou, anytime you come to San Diego, I got you. Now, I mean, I've also worked in promotions, a number of different events, and I've heard that phrase a million times. And usually what happens is nothing. But lo and behold, I had a dance camp in Tijuana, Mexico, and I had a layover for a day in San Diego. And I was like, who do I know in San Diego? Jordan's like, yo, Lemire, I got you. I flew out to San Diego. He pointed me to a place where there's a dance social, places to eat. He helped me out. And I get it. He was busy. We couldn't spend time together when I was in San Diego, but he made sure I was good. And for me, especially being on the East Coast, being in a state that I've never been in before, being, in a time where I don't have much time, just being able to direct me in the right place is huge. So for this episode of Integrity, I'm thrilled to welcome our guest, Mr. Jordan Jerome Harris. What's good?
Yo, I love y'all's energy. Like, this is incredible. Both of y'all are just, this is amazing. Y'all are dope.
You're very kind. Lemire gives the best introductions, like, in the business. So I hope you felt that.
I did. Like, you don't even need an audience.
Oh, man. Jordan, what's happening?
What's up? What's up? What's up?
I'm good, man. I'm chilling. So, Sherry, this is Jordan. This is my man. Now, when I see it, this guy was killing it on the dance floor. I mean, y'all thought I was good, but I was watching him. He's like, I'm watching you.
Yeah. Wow, that shows about integrity.
You're on the dance floor a time or two, so I know that is no small compliment.
Hey,
seriously, that's why I'm kind of confused. I thought this show's about integrity, and you are the best dancer out there. Like this.
Listen, all right. Listen. You're like I had you on, said you had integrity, and now you're starting to lie to the people. Like that's not. Listen, Jordan. That's not on brand. That's not on brand.
I got you. My bad.
Jordan, one of the things that I found out about you after you left is that you're a public speaker, and not like a stand-up in church, although that is important, but like you talk to a lot of people. So what I want to do is I want you to tell us a little about you, tell us about your public speaking, tell us about everything that we need to know.
Yeah, I'll make it semi-brief and then we can dig in wherever y'all would like to. But first, thank you all both for having me. Glad to be here. Y'all are dope. I've been listening to the conversation. Y'all are dropping some serious gems and interrogating stuff deeply. So I'm just honored to be here with y'all. Name is Jordan. Very briefly, born in Chicago. Came out to San Diego when I was 15. Ended up working for a nonprofit, working with first-gen students, going to college. So I love that work. And then people just kept asking me to speak. And then I realized I get paid for it. And then I just kept doing it. And then I just kept going. And then I was like, all right, cool. Like, seriously.
Hey, why not?
And we met in Boston because I was actually blessed with a full ride at Harvard in my master's in education. So I was out there to get my master's in education. And then outside of that, I speak a lot, primarily around like equity and anti-racism, a little bit around like leadership and aspects of it, of that as well. But I think my career kind of led me to being grassroots and working with students and families here in San Diego and some of our most disenfranchised communities. But then also having this dynamic where I'm able to speak to audiences, some that are primarily all wealthy white folks, and talking about things like racism or prejudice or things like that. And so it's a great balance of being able to serve and be based in the community while also being able to speak to different communities about different things that are impacting our everyday lives.
Word.
That's
That's dope, man.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. I'm excited.
So
Yeah.
first question.
Uh-oh.
In San Diego, do
Yeah.
you say Dago? Is that a thing that's real?
Some folks say it. Most locals don't really say it too much, but some folks say it. Some folks say it. I will never say it, but some folks say it.
Never. Never is very clear.
Okay,
Got
you're
it.
right. Never is too strong. Never is too strong. Never is too strong. I've said it a few times, but not too often.
Just gotta know.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So I guess my question is for you, before we get into, the topic of the day, how did you get into dancing, man? How did you get into Latin dance, salsa, and bachata? How did that happen?
Yeah, so it was a colleague of mine who was trying to date people more, and he heard that there was this opportunity to learn amongst a lot of people who he would be possibly interested in. And he was like, "Hey, can you
Beautiful
come
way to
dance?"
say that.
That's right. He was
Hold on.
like,
Can I stop you right there for a second?
"Go
This
ahead."
is how you know this man speaks for a living, because he laid it down real gentle for some. Like, I'm not gonna put him on the spot. He was trying to pick up the ladies, and I heard that a lot of ladies dance. So he learned. Listen, this is how you know he does this for a living, ladies and
Hey,
gentlemen.
So he asked me if I could go with him, and I was like, I had never even heard of this thing called bachata, and I was like, yeah, I'll go. And at that time, I wasn't learning much in life, and I was like eager to learn something. And after 3 weeks, he wasn't meeting anyone, and I fell in love with just learning a new dance. I felt like it was a different language, and so I kept going.
Sure.
And now I just loved it, and I loved it just for the sake of like meeting folks. And like the dance community, it's actually like a whole new friendship circle. Like you meet people, and like once you're really in it, people are just so nice to you. You see all the regulars, you making friends, and I'm just like, yo. Because for me too, I was also trying to like get out the club days because I was like, I'm over clubs. Like I don't want that. And it was like exercise. I was drinking water. I was learning dance moves. I was meeting people. I was like, life is great. This is perfect.
Yes, hydrate. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, no, that's fantastic. But yeah, like one of my I have two memories of you. One is a blurry memory, and one is super crystal clear. Like I kind of remembered you when you were in Boston. Like I remember the times we met, but not each instance. And I'm usually good at that. But I know we pull across on the side of the floor, chit chat. But it seemed as if you were always there. I was like, oh, maybe he was on break, So when I saw you and we interacted, I was like, oh, maybe you were away, But I always remembered that you were around. But I kid you not, when I went to San Diego, I remember that for a while, because I had a buddy of mine, his name is Eric. When I went down to DC, he had invited a friend of mine who was from Canada to come to DC when he was in LA. Dancers travel all the time. So if you got the map, don't worry about it. It's not important. But one of the things that he said, he's like, yo, I never want to be that person that's like, oh, come to my city, come to my town, I got you, and not show up. And so what he would do is he would go over and above just to make sure that you're good. And that stuck with me. I was like, that's the kind of person that I want to be. Like, I want to have means so that I can tell someone, yo, come, don't worry about it. You're good on me, and mean it. Because I feel like sometimes when you talk about integrity, sometimes people want to believe that they mean what they say, and sometimes people believe that they mean what they say, but life happens, So long story short, I was fortunate enough to participate in a dance retreat in Tijuana. Never been to TJ, as people call it. Heard bad things, but I'm like, whatever. Never been to San Diego either. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to be there for 24 hours. Don't have a car. My stay is in Mexico, so I can't stay anywhere in San Diego. So I'm literally just bumming around. I rented a car because I'm like, I'm going to walk around. And so I put it on Facebook. Where are my West Coast people at? And Jordan's like, yo, hit me when you get here. And I got there. I hit him up. I was like, all right, first, you can go to this social later tonight. Here's some good tacos, this and the third, and we'll see if we can link. We had conflicting events, so we couldn't end up at the same one. I think you left when I came or something like that.
Yeah.
But either way, I had a great time. I never forgot that. I'm like, yo, I got to link with you, man. And that meant so much to me because I was a promoter and a photographer in Boston, and that that is like rampant. Yo, call me when you get to the front of the line. You get to the front of the line, call, radio silence. You know what I mean? And it's like that stuff. Like, and I think one of the things that people don't realize is that when you don't have integrity, it's like it's a special kind of hurt. You know, it's like it's not just that I feel bad because I didn't get what I want. I didn't get what you said that you're going to give me. I look extra stupid on top of that because I trusted you. It's like,
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
what lapse in judgment did I make to make me think that I should trust you?
Yeah.
Because if that lapse in judgment is the same one that I used to trust you and these 10 other people, now not only do I have to question you, I got to question 10 other people's judgment, and it's your fault. I mean, but it's not even your fault because I made the decision to trust you. So I really want to blame you, but I got to blame myself for your mistake. That's what happens when you don't have integrity. And that's why it hurts so much.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah. So, but I say all that to say this. My question to you is, what does integrity mean to you? And when have you come across it, had a struggle? Talk to me.
Well, I think Sherry, right? Am I saying the name?
Yeah, that's right.
You hit on it. It's funny. My curriculum for this year, I'm teaching my students, is actually focused on values, and our theme is based on a compass. And so everything we're teaching on is just like, how do you know where you're going in alignment and those different things? Y'all were dropping so much knowledge before, so I'm like, I just literally just want to say amen to everything y'all said. I think the only things I was thinking of, and I'll take this a different direction. The only things I was thinking of is like, particularly in America, I think individualism often is a barrier to integrity.
Exactly.
I think oftentimes we'll hold this idea that it's like me against you. And more times than not, I want to say things or do things to make me look good, but it's only to benefit me at the end. Because sometimes we've internalized this idea of like, in order for me to win, you're my competition, not my companion.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes for me, I think integrity is this kind of alignment with yourself, and even going back and really thinking of like, what are the truths that I hold and why, and being so convicted in them that you can operate with them every single day. Because I think sometimes we can't operate in integrity because we don't even know what we really believe. And we're like, well, I think this might be the truth, but like, I don't know if I really hold this.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's the exact thing that I was really hoping to ask you about. And it's, you know, we talked about this a little before. It's like, what happens when we are in tension with this individualism? And you touched on it, right? We live in a capitalist society that says winning looks a specific way. And I think people often get confused about integrity, following your moral compass, and what society tells us winning is. But my question is, you know, Lumiere just talked about this, you know, doing what you say, keeping your word, right? Having that be an understanding of integrity. But what happens when that conflicts with self-care? And can you talk a little bit about that? And I mean, like that moment when you said, I'm going to do these things, and you meant them, and you want to come through on those things that you said you were going to do. But that moment that you realize that it's not at just like the expense of some slight discomfort, but it could be at the expense of your health, right? And you could feel like my integrity is at risk. And so talk to me about how you think about that, or how you coach folks through a circumstance like that.
That's a good question. Wow. That's a good question. I think this. I think first and foremost, in an ideal world, integrity can exist, but I think concurrently also grace needs to exist as well. Every day, life is life. And what I mean by that is, I think we've seen, especially during COVID, people have lost jobs, people have lost family members, people have lost things that they thought was secure. And I think one thing that folks have to give themselves grace with, and hope others can lend it to them, is being able to say that, hey, some of these things might have changed, and being able to vocalize that and for it able to be received. And I think, to your point though, Sherry, I think it's folks having that self-awareness to know at what moment is my integrity compromising my own well-being, and do I have the comfortability or the tools to voice that to the person to still say, hey, look, like, I really want to do this, something is, and but the thing is like, it's hard too, because sometimes like, yo, I feel like I lied to you if you just came up last minute and you're just like, yo, my bad, like something else came up, something like that. And so I think it's really just like that honesty throughout and really communicating things as soon as we hear them. I think integrity is just as much saying you can do something. Integrity is also saying as quickly as you realize something may change, getting out before and not waiting until the last minute. Because I think sometimes we might lie to ourselves and be like, well, maybe I can do it. And then you bail on the last minute. I've known too many folks that have bailed or just gone ghost. And I'm like, yo, like there should be some time before that you could have vocalized like something was going on. But I think to that point, sometimes we hold ourselves and like, I need to do this, I need to do this. And there's almost too much shame that we can't even be wrong or not be able to come through.
Yes.
And because of that, we just hide away.
Yeah, I think folks fall victim to this kind of almost like short-sighted view of integrity. I think, I've been in some amazing rooms, right? And last year I was named an Obama fellow with the Obama Foundation. And it's really cool. I've gotten to meet some really amazing folks. And these are some power players. And one of the things that they talk about is that it is your responsibility, your individual responsibility to commit to your self-care and your ability to show up in social justice movement fully, completely, in a way that allows someone to be incorruptible and demonstrate integrity. You have a responsibility to take care of yourself so that you can show up in that space. And if you're not doing those things and showing up anyway, it's causing harm. And that's an example of you not centering integrity. And those conversations kind of blew my mind because that wasn't how I was thinking about it. We're not in a society where we can be allowed to pause, where we can be allowed to think about the long arc and how we show up for that. And it's win-win, go, 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 or you feel bad. Or you may not be able to do things, or you may not be accepted by your peer group. And so that point that you made of actually it's about communication. It's about communicating where you are in that moment. It just really stood out to me.
And I think to that, two quick things to that point. I think the first is, I think what I'm hearing from you say is that integrity is also directly related to our self-awareness. That if we aren't doing the self-work to know, hey, you know, if I've made a commitment and I've had an emotionally draining day, or I've worked my whole day, or I have some things like maybe you shouldn't make that commitment, or knowing what you need to do so that you can fully honor that commitment. And I think to your other side too, I think one of the things that we have to unlearn specifically with like capitalism is how we can oftentimes put our value based on our productivity. And so the same thing can feel that tension of like, if I've made a promise, I would feel like my value then is based off of this productivity, me being able to perform this. And I think sometimes some of the greatest forms of protest is rest. And that means taking care of yourself when you need to.
It's a radical act. And you know, at the beginning, Lumiere and I were talking about folks in positional power and how they demonstrate integrity and what kind of like the risks and responsibilities of that are. And I've been talking about this a lot more recently in my work, how important it is to model rest, and how like that's actually a radical act that like dismantles like elements of white supremacy and the nonprofit industrial complex, just literally saying and modeling, I am going to take time off, especially when you're working with folks that may feel pressure that they can't do that. But in order for everyone to show up fully, that's like an act of integrity. And I don't think that we often think about it that way, right? There are so many challenges and threats to us being able to center our morals, our ethics, like what our ancestors have told us, what we hold to be truly valuable is so regularly or can be devalued that it can be hard to hold that at the center.
You know, this makes me think about that. I keep going back to the self-awareness piece, but I think the first person that we really need to practice integrity with is ourselves. And I think a lot of us might spend a lot of our lives in some form of self-betrayal or living out something that we aren't fully aligned with. And because we might not be taking the time to rest or reflect or make sure we're aligned, some of our own lives, we might want to model something that we might not even be doing for ourselves. Like, let's keep it 100. And that tension is tough, right? And so not only are we feeling frustrated if we can't be integrity with someone else saying I did this, but then we're looking at ourselves and being like, I'm not even doing this with myself. Like, so it's some serious just like reworking that we just need to be mindful of and cautious of and gracious with, and just knowing that we need to start with like, how am I honoring myself and being true to who I am, and then being able to administer that and work with other folks on that as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's just so real.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even like I feel like I'm at a seminar right now. I'm just like Jordan, where's your hat? Where's your hat? So I can add something to the building fund. You know what I mean?
Hey, you preaching, man.
Listen. I'm the devil. Oh man. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an amazing conversation with Jordan Jerome Harris. What we're going to do is we're going to say a few words to our people on the interwebs because we got a lot of comments rolling in. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back. Jordan, don't go anywhere. Sherry, I know you're going to hold me down. Ladies and gentlemen, we're streaming it, and you're here. It's the If You Stream It, They Will Come podcast, and we will be right back. All right, y'all. What's happening? We are back. It's the If You Stream It, They Will Come podcast. We are your hosts, Lemire D and Sherry D. And we got my main man, Mr. Jordan Jerome Harris, in the building. Shout him out, y'all. For those of you guys just tuning in, it's a late night talk show kind of podcast kind of a thing. Nothing fancy, even though Jordan is wearing a suit, Sherry is wearing a shirt, and I'm wearing a t-shirt. It's fine. I've got letters on it, which means it's designer, okay? Shout outs to Mr. Faday's Designs, who custom designed this t-shirt. But more importantly, shout outs to us If You Stream It, They Will Come podcast. If you want to follow us online, you can check us out at the If You Stream It podcast on Instagram. That's just If You Stream It podcast. Or you can check us out on our website, ifyoustreamitpodcast.com. Yes, we're doing slightly larger than small things. Yep.
Yeah.
Slightly larger.
Slightly, just a little bit. Don't want to brag here. For tonight's topic, we're talking about integrity. What does it mean to have integrity? And we're talking with Jordan Jerome Harris, and we're right in the middle of a conversation, so we're going to hop right back into it. So one of the things that you, Jordan, one of the things that you talked about was that struggle between wanting to live up to a code of integrity that you don't believe in. I think that's super important from a number of different aspects. From one that seems like really obvious to me, is like, especially for those who grew up in, let's say, a religious household or that has a house of faith, or not even that, just culture. Because culture is a big thing, you know, and whether it be religion or culture, even though culture is a subset, religion is a subset of culture. We are raised and instilled with things that are on autopilot from such a young age. And we don't do them because we believe in them. We do them because it's the only thing that we've always done, you know? And one of the things that I think that you said was powerful is like, not is only what is our moral code, but why do I believe it? And I think you're right, we don't take the time sometimes, and we're not given the space to ask that question of why, you know? And I one of the things is like, I say I believe in God, and it's not really up for debate. I'm not saying what I'm a good person or a bad person or a better person or as a worse person. I'm just saying that because of my life experiences, it has led me to a place where I believe that there is a God. I'm not saying it's male or female. I'm not making any inferences outside of that, you know? But I know...
She's a woman, though, just to be clear.
Exactly. There's no disagreement there. But I say all that to say this, that especially as I was growing, that struggle of what I believe and why was huge. And I watched a lot of people grow. But one of the things that I realized, like, the more I grew to understand what I to believe is God, is like, it's just that, is that finding out that why was way more important than whether I believed or I didn't believe. And if anything, one of the things that really that pivoted for me, I was speaking to my mom. She's like, because I was like, yo, I want to hear God. I want to find out what is like his mind for me. And this is like a specific time in life. And she's like, look, why don't you do this? Try not to hear him. I say him just right now for context. I'll try not to hear God and you'll hear him. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. You asked me, here's the answer. Stop hearing. If you think you hear, ignore it. Because when you try not to hear, you'll hear it perfectly clear. And essentially, what she was saying is find out why. You might feel a certain way. You might hear a certain thing. But if it's really about your relationship, find out why is it important towards that relationship. And I say all that to say this, you can take that to work. You can take that to school. Why are you going to get that degree? Why is college a must? Why isn't trade school a must? Why is any form of higher education a must? Why can't I just go to work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why is it that I have to, that if I'm a man, I got to go to the gym and have this? Why is that a must? If I'm in quote unquote a lady, why do I have to be nice and polite? Why do I even have to identify as either or? Why is that a must?
Yeah.
And then once I realize that, I feel like following that compass will be easier.
You have to know why you're following it.
Exactly. For sure.
Yeah. I think the hard part to that is that it's so true. And I think the space it takes to really unpack some of those conversations is tough, to really question whether it be our parents, our older siblings, our religious institutions that have made us feel like these are traits that good people should have, right? Whatever they are, whether you see God in a gendered view or anything, when you meet folks or come into new truths where it might question this, you might be like, hold on, like those are hard moments of reckoning. And I'm reminded, Martin Luther King Jr. talked about nothing pains some people more than having to think. And I think sometimes we think about reflecting on our own selves. It's interesting. I feel like I think someone said it, like, folks are really good at giving other people solutions to their questions, but not really looking at their own. And I think integrity really requires of us that ask of saying, like, how did I come to these truths and what might have informed these?
For sure. Before we hop into that more, we got a comment from one of our listeners, and so I just want to read it. Sorry, I'm gonna have to cover your face. It looks lovely, but gotta do it. It's part of the show. So this is from my homie Shalavit. I love this girl. So she is also someone that I feel like has modeled integrity, but in a different way, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. So Shalavit, shout outs to you. If you're still listening. So she says, integrity is different than morality. It simply means, does it work as planned? There is no wrong when it comes to integrity. Integrity simply means working. It can refer to timeliness, to being in communication, to restoring the integrity if and when it's out. As humans, we normally run out of integrity, and it is ours to restore, acknowledging and taking responsibility. And I feel like a lot of the things that she said echoes everything, like bits and pieces of what we all said. And one of the reasons why I said that she models integrity in a different way is like, from the moment that I've met Shalavit, she is someone who has lived as herself. Now, she has like a very broad history. She's gone through a lot of things. She overcome an eating disorder. She is not from the US. So I think she's from Israel. So she has a number of different things, but she's also Harvard grad. She was also a PhD. She also worked at MIT. So like very well-read, very intelligent person. She also has rainbow hair. She also often rides around the city with wings on. She often might have like a lot of clothes, and sometimes she might have not so many clothes. You know what I mean? She has, as some people would say, is a great body, but at the same time, she's against body shaming. And when we met, and as I meet a lot of people dancing, she's dancing, doing a thing, rainbow, and she's killing it, but dance completely to the beat of her own drum, But it was never like, oh, because I've got rainbow hair, I'm cool. It's like, I just got rainbow hair. It's just me. You know what I mean? I'm dancing and everyone's looking at me because they're looking at me. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And when we sat and had conversations, the dialogue was just that. You know what I mean? And some people would say, if you looked at her, it's like, oh, she's just center of attention. Oh, she's just another pretty girl. Or she's just another this, another number of different things. But that's just her. The same way that she's a PhD, the same way that she started a conference over in Ireland on mental health, like the same dance conferences we go to, she did the same thing over there for mental health. You know what I mean? Both are her, and you can't separate one from the other. So everything that she does, she's following that compass. But the reason why that's important is because sometimes we look at the destination and we try to turn our compass to make us get there instead of following our compass and going where it leads. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we want to bend the compass to go where we want it to go, not where the
Yeah,
compass is leading us. I feel
yeah.
that, and that actually that brings up my question for you, Jordan, and it really is about how you follow your compass, because one of the things you said as you were introducing yourself was that you people just started asking you to speak, and then you
Yeah.
started speaking. And in the same way that Lumia just told this beautiful story about a person that dances, walks, moves to the beat of their own drum, I think that for you, in a position where you're delivering programming, you're delivering motivational speeches,
Yeah.
I suspect that it's not just they hand you a microphone and you do it. I think you run out of that over time, right? You run out of things to say. And I
Yeah.
imagine that you have a responsibility to learn, grow, develop, and continue to contribute. Otherwise, it would just come off like BS, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to deliver something at like really high quality. And so there's something about like when you make it, when you reach a place where people will pay you to talk, their integrity has to come in somewhere. So I'm curious, now that you're in a place that a lot of people want to go, a lot of people want to be paid to stand in front of groups of folks and talk, and they should be. But I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the work that you have to do to follow your moral compass in that space so that you can show up in it the way that you feel like you need to. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Can you say more? Do you mean like on the topics of speeches or how I'm developing them? What do you mean?
Yeah, I think, well, like even before that, like you're talking
Yeah.
about like what you develop and what you have to do, but even before that, there
Right.
are folks listening that maybe want to be a motivational speaker. Maybe they
Yeah.
want to give presentations. I gave a TED talk a couple weeks ago, right? Maybe they want to do those things.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, as a person that now gets paid to do
Yeah.
those things, I'm just wondering if you can talk about what following your moral compass to deliver high quality stuff looks like. You can't just get up. Maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe you can just get up and be like, this morning, I want to talk about this. Maybe it looks different. And
I
talk
wish.
to us about your commitment to following your moral compass in that role of guiding people, right? You're being a guide here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting, and I think to some of the things that you're talking about, specifically around power dynamics, I believe so much in like just humility and knowing how quickly things can be taken away. And coming from Chicago and some humbler beginnings, I think that informs some of my approach to the work. I also think my father really instilled in me a level of excellence before you do so, especially when it comes to speaking. Speaking and having a microphone, folks will think and take some of the things that you say, and it can impact their life or for better or for worse.
Yes.
And I think it's very important to have the character to hold that space, and the content or the excellence in having it well enough so you aren't going to do harm, or you aren't going to lead people astray or just say stuff that's not true. And I think, unfortunately, we're not seeing that in all speakers that we're seeing today, because unfortunately, too, to that point, you can sell a lie, and people will buy it and rock with it. I think for me, especially with the work and some of the conversations that I had and conversations I had with my father, he was like, look, my father and grandfather, they were all pastors. And so I grew up around family members that just had mics and just were always around, but very like community centered grassroots type of like serving folks and doing things like that. But the amount of work that I saw them put into a 5-minute speech, it was almost like 5 or 10 hours of just prep work, of just like collecting information and seeing where things are at. And my father always told me, he was like, look, it is a honor to hold a microphone, and you need to honor that and really do the work beforehand. And I think even more so too, after you give a speech, I'm sure you're doing a TED talk, there is a certain level of fame or just notoriety that could come with that. And that could come with folks asking for favors or doing different or just doing whatever. And I think you have to have the integrity to be able to not like just mess people up or just be like, hey, like And so I think there's a lot of pitfalls that could happen very easily. And so I think you just need to have the character and the content beforehand to really hold it, and also the humility to know like, yo, like we're in this together. And sometimes for me, I even hate being on a spotlight because I'm like, yo, the answers are in this room. I just want to facilitate a conversation. Let's go from there.
For sure.
But I think that is a marker of integrity, right? And that
Yeah.
humility that you're describing previously. It's like this constant commitment to following that compass looks like continuing to hone your craft, continuing to be researched. And it also probably looks like stepping aside, right? It looks like not squandering or hoarding spotlight, but recognizing when you should and shouldn't stand in it. Sounds like a core tenet of integrity.
For sure.
And I'll tell you this when it comes to speeches with that. Last year or this year alone, I probably, and this isn't to brag, just to be honest, I probably gave away 10 to 20 speeches that were paid because I didn't feel like I was the expert in this space to talk about this conversation the way they wanted it to.
That's integrity.
What I gladly lean on, though, is knowing that I have friends and scholars that I can pull in and just offer them opportunities, and hope that maybe one day if someone comes to you, offer you a gig, it comes back to me. And if not, that's okay. I don't give expecting that you're going to give it back, but I just know I could make money off of this opportunity, but it doesn't feel right because I would just give you a surface level, which would be cool. Y'all probably wouldn't even know. Like, some folks wouldn't even know. They'll be blinded by like, oh, he went to Harvard, he knows everything or something like that, right? Some folks, especially out here in West Coast, you say Harvard, they're like, oh my God, you cure cancer? I'm like, no. And so I think just knowing my own thing, I think about inch wide versus a mile deep, or a jack of all trades, master of none. I try and be very clear on like, here's the content I feel comfortable discussing. If you want to come to me and offer me something outside of that, I might not be able to do it, and I'll be honest with it. And then I'll gladly give it to somebody else because I don't want to act like I can talk about something I really can't.
That's so real.
And that's hard. That's hard. That's hard. That's hard. Because that's like money that I could take that I'm like,
that's that treasure chest on the corner that you exactly. Now you're in conflict, right? That's what we talked about earlier, installing this solar in different places. You have a decision to make. You could just be like, that's good enough. They'll never know. Or you could be like, that is not excellence. That is not what I committed to doing. That is not following the moral compass. And I so appreciate you answering that question so transparently, so honestly, because it is hard, right? And I think that, again, I think that there are a lot of folks that, and it doesn't have to just be public speaking. It could be so many things that involve a microphone, and they don't always involve a physical mic, right? Like, talk about making music, sure. But we talk about business owners. Business owners have microphones, right? And they have decisions that they make, and they impact, so many people. Lumir, I have one more question, but before I, hog the mic here, I wonder if you had one that you wanted to throw in the mix.
No, so one of the things I was doing is I was taking notes because like a lot of things that you're saying, my question, actually my last question for you, and Sherry, you might be able to go first because it's probably like ties in, is like, what are some steps that people can take, like day-to-day steps that people can take to check their integrity, like tips, tricks? And I wouldn't call them tricks, but like key things kind of to look at. And Sherry, you can probably ask your question first, and then Jordan, you can probably close with some of those
for sure,
those tips.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lumir. I think your question is a bit better to kind of close with, because mine is kind of the opposite. Of course, this is why Lumir and I do our thing together, and we've touched on this like a little bit, but I think that there's something to acknowledge first about kind of like how integrity can be weaponized, and I just wanted to put like a fine point on that, because we talked about capitalist culture, and I alluded to the nonprofit industrial complex, and I think that it's important for us to acknowledge that sometimes people's perspective of this word and how they hear it can be weaponized against Black and brown communities.
Very much so.
We talked earlier about this tension between, look, life happens, and their integrity looks like a commitment to communication. But I think oftentimes for low-income folks, for folks that are traditionally and historically excluded largely, that
Yep.
we are honest about our circumstances and we are
Mhm.
in dialogue about them, that
Mhm.
can be weaponized against us. And I'm so happy that Lumiere asked about whether or not you could talk about tips for folks to really think about to exercise their self-awareness. But before we get there, I was wondering, Jordan, if you could talk a little bit about this piece or your perspective. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe integrity can't be weaponized. I think that it can. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. How does that land for you? Do you see that happening, that integrity can be weaponized against Black and brown people?
Oh, very much so. Very, very much so. The first thing I was thinking was that, um, and this is just off the top of my mind, so I need to like sit with this and think about this some more because this is a very good point you brought up. But I'm thinking about how, for some folks, particularly coming from communities of color that have been disenfranchised, that have lived experiences that in a capitalistic, productive culture doesn't care to hear for, there is not safety and integrity. And oftentimes I think about some of my students who are going to school, who I might encourage them to say, hey, let them know that like your parents were recently deported or there's some things going on. And they're like, and well, I tell them that with caution because the real truth is sometimes teachers, administrators, bosses, whatever folks in positions of power don't care to hear it. And sometimes folks might be like, yo, this is your job. Like this is what you're supposed to do. You're a student. Like, I don't care for that. This paper's due tomorrow. And so I think about some of the students that I've worked with who have actually been more damaged because the system expects them to still produce or to still be okay or to still perform. Where it's like, even if I speak my truth, it's either invalidated, ignored, or told like it's not welcomed here. And so I think it's sitting with me very well, especially as I think about my students in online learning and distance learning now, and how I have some students that have almost been conditioned to lie because the truth either isn't welcomed or folks don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I
That's
just
that.
want to sit with that
That's
for a moment because I think it's really heavy, right?
yeah,
And I think it's important to recognize the power of integrity,
yeah,
the hope behind it, the promise that it has and how important it
yeah,
is, but it's also important to acknowledge the complexity that
yeah,
exists with how that gets rolled out in community and how that shows up in this relationship of privilege. But that said, and I wanted to make sure that we kind of clarified that point first, right?
Mm.
That
good. That's good.
there's a conversation about safety that has to
Yeah.
happen when we talk about integrity. Uh,
Yeah,
Actually,
but
before
go ahead,
that,
Luke.
that actually brings up an interesting point because especially when you're talking about people of color, um, I feel like it is a common thing. It's that I don't even have it story, whether it be in job or work or whatever. And it's just like it's common, but at the same time, it's like how do you like I guess my question is how do you balance mm, speaking with integrity and then as people would say, speaking it into the universe. And I know this is on the spot, so you may not be able to delve all the way into this, but whether
yeah,
it be, and again, I say this because my background is coming from a church institution background. And this
yeah.
is, and yeah, I see you smiling because you already know where I'm going. It's
I
like,
know exactly where it goes. This is good. Yeah,
I
I
am
mean,
lost, y'all. Where y'all at?
Oh,
so,
here we
and
go.
again, this is no disrespect to anyone's faith life. And I
Uh,
say that just because my personal story, and maybe it's another episode for another day. It's just like the way my brain has developed, things are very black and white. And gray only exists after acknowledging that this is black and this is white. But without knowing that it's black and white, the gray is irrelevant. If there's only one color, it's black. I say all that to say this, and as my faith life has evolved and changed, um, there have definitely been places where people are like, oh, how are you feeling? Oh, I'm getting better. Translation, I'm sick as a dog. I get it. You don't want to put that energy out there. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm waiting for the right job. I'm unemployed. I get it, but it's like, where is the balance? Because on the other side, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a self-starter, I know that like what you think is what you manifest, and not in, as some people would say, like a spooky way or a spiritual way. It's like what you think your attention is on, and your activity follows your intention. So if I want to have a podcast and it's all I think about, I'm gonna get a mic, I'm gonna get a stand, I'm gonna get a co-host, I'm gonna register it, I'm gonna get a web, because that's what my attention's on. So what I'm thinking, I'm manifesting. Now
Mhm.
I say I'll say this is like I was having a conversation with someone that I didn't really know. So it's like, no sweat. I said, I have a podcast. And I said, we. She's like, who's we? Oh, I said, well, the podcast. So one, because anything that I start, I always look to the future because I know it's going to get bigger, because I don't start it so that it's small. So I will always refer to my companies, anything as we. And as long as I've done that, they've always grown. Knowing whether or not in the moment is just me. And she's like, you mean you? I'm like, no, I mean we, because the podcast is not just me, it's also my fans, it's also my listeners. But I know that I'm not going to be the only one who's going to be running it, like co-host this and the third. So when I was speaking to Sherry, and Sherry's like, Lou, I'm in, I wasn't surprised. I was like, duh, of course. I was like, I was talking about a co-host last week. Now here's the thing. Had I said, oh, this is my podcast, it's only me, or woe is me, it's only me, then when Sherry is like, oh, Lou, I'm down, I would have been like, oh my gosh. And I was still like that, for full disclosure. But it wasn't out of I can't believe that this person believes me. It's like, oh, I'm excited that this person believes my vision. But because I was able to speak my vision clearly enough, she was able to hop on board, And I say all that to say, especially taking it back to the African American community, like, where do we draw that line between, yo, I ain't got it, versus I'm working on getting it? And it's not like an excuse, but it's actually like, it's the truth. I don't know what way to say it, if you kind of get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think part of what you're saying is like, yes, integrity can be weaponized in ways against certain communities, but how do we reclaim it and be able to tell a story about that is one, powerful, allows us to march toward our compass, and kind of removes this opportunity, right? Like at the beginning of his story, Lumiere could have said, my company of one, right? But he chose to say we and spoke something aspirational. He chose to claim that. And, how does that kind of show up in this equation of this question that I asked of like, hey, can this be weaponized against us?
It's a serious question.
Lumiere said at the beginning we were going to keep it fun and light. I don't know what happened here. Integrity is tense.
It's tough.
I don't know if this answers this. But here's an initial thought on this, and don't hold this to me. This is recorded. Okay, cool. But I think to that point, to what I think I'm hearing you say, which I could be incorrect with, I think one of the first things that I always try and break out of are like false binaries, or seeing things as completely one thing or the other, and being able to sit in the gray. And I think particularly in this, what I think I would hear is like, and I tried to write this down. I feel like integrity would inform our daily actions, but the vision would be the daydream. And I think it's the merging of those two that allow it to be like, because I think what you're kind of speaking about is like, how do we make it so people aren't lying? And I'm like, yo, if we think about all of like our social justice movements and things, like we need radical imagination to be emancipatory, so that we can be integral and in how our daily actions are. So I think the integrity is saying, I'm getting this done today, but the vision is saying, I'm not doing this alone, so I can use the word we. I think that's some way. That's my initial thought to that, but I need to put some more thoughts out. Yeah, I thought you said it was keeping this light. This ain't. You're talking about language. I was just talking about integrity.
Man, you're so smart, Jordan. And he said, got excited, and then that's
all right.
My entry point was a compass, and then we ended up here. What happened?
All right. So why don't we do this? We're gonna take a quick break. Jordan's gonna give us some quick tips on integrity. After this quick break, we'll wrap it up. For those of you guys just tuning in, it's the If You Stream It, They Will Come podcast. I'm your host, Lumiere D, with your host, Sherry D, and we're with Mr. Jordan Jerome Harris. Going to rock out to some Elder, and we be right back. Oh, actually, yeah, when we come back, we're going to do our third shift shout outs, and then we'll close out. Yep. All right.
Great.
Perfect. Let's
Yeah.
go. Oh
Jordan,
man.
Jordan.
What's up?
Dropping bombs on him.
Oh,
Nah, y'all just.
How are you?
you got my eyes are watering.
Oh,
I'm
no.
looking over here.
Oh,
What? Listen,
man.
thank you. Thank
All
you.
love, y'all. All
How are you?
love.
Goodness. The
Oh,
show will never be the same.
oh
No,
man.
hey, this is y'all got 86 more to go. It's on the go up.
Listen, we might need listen. We might need like freestyle Sundays.
Oh man.
Nah, man, whatever.
Say it again Sundays. Yeah. Say it. Say it again.
Say it again.
Say it again.
Jordan Jerome Harrison, everybody on the spot. That
Yeah.
was truly phenomenal. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
man.
I appreciate you all. You all are some lights, and like legit from my heart. I just this was a dope space. This was energizing for me. So thank you all for hosting this space, for this engaging conversation. Y'all are brilliant minds. I'm just glad to be in community with both of you all, and then I really do mean that. And so Sherry, I guess I gotta say it to you too now, because I guess you're family now.
Yeah.
Like, if you're ever down in San Diego, if you come down this way, you're a lot closer than this guy. So,
Exactly.
And vice versa when you find yourself in the Bay. Come holler at me.
definitely appreciate it. Definitely
Super.
appreciate it.
All right. So I think what we're gonna do is, Jordan, you can stay or you can go. We got about 15 minutes left. What I want to do is I just want to talk about a few tips that we can give the listeners so that they can walk in integrity. Because especially in 2020 with all that's going on, we joke and we say this is a positive space and we don't want to talk about heavy things. Not because we want to pretend like they're not going on, but because we know that they're going on. We want to give people a space where they can feel like they can be free, But at the same time, I feel like it's always important that when you're at most relaxed, when you're at rest, that's when you can grow the most. So I want to take this time to give people some tips about integrity. And one thing that I'll start it off is by saying, like, do what you say, but more importantly, be careful with your words. Now, there's always going to be a time where it's like, whether you say something and life will happen. Like you said, grace is important, especially when you say something and you mean it. You believe that you want to fulfill it, but life happens and that's okay. But I would challenge all of us, and I say this to myself first, be careful with your words, especially when it comes to commitment. No is just as powerful as yes. Especially as someone who is a young business owner, I had to learn that the hard way. And it doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't mean that you care about that person any less. But like, if you really care about someone, especially for my artists, shout outs to all my entrepreneurs and artists. The best thing that you can do for your friends is say, no, I can't do that for you, or no, I can't do that for you for free. Because it devalues you, it devalues them. And I feel like I say all that to say this, that being careful with your words so that when someone does ask you a thing, you don't just default and say the first thing that comes to your mind, because in order to maintain that integrity in that person's eyes, sometimes you might have to hold that. And like we talked about before, it may not be the best thing for your personal health. So I say all that to say that being careful with your words is a tip for maintaining integrity.
Yeah, I think my tip. I just want to go before you know Jordan Jerome Harrison.
Hey,
Jumping.
JJH.
Stop it.
But I would say that my tip is it has to do with gentleness and honesty. I think when we're talking about integrity, especially based on the conversation that we had today, I think there is this core tenet of honesty, right? And it sounds so simple, be honest, but it also requires you to be gentle. And I think you have to be honest and gentle with yourself and honest and gentle with community. And I think that's a really important ingredient to kind of honing your own integrity so that it can show up and so that you can exist in a way that like models integrity. You have to be gentle and honest with yourself, and you have to be gentle and honest with the people around you.
For sure.
Dang, y'all both hit on stuff I was gonna say. Okay, okay. I'll say two things. I think one thing I'll say is, in case you don't know where you stand, if you have close friends, maybe just asking them, like, hey, where's my integrity? Like, are there areas that I have done? And I think secondly, too, is that in my opinion, in some relationships, there still might be time for you to ask for forgiveness if there has been a broken in integrity or a brokenness of trust. And sometimes that might be hard, but I think in modeling the world where like restitution and reintegration, well, not always reintegration, but bringing folks back together in community is real. I think sometimes it's one of the things we can do is just call someone and say, hey, I know I broke your trust here. I didn't do this. I just want to ask you for forgiveness. And it could be something small. It could be you told someone, hey, I was going to bring you some fast food, or I was going to bring you something and I didn't do it. I just want to apologize for that. And I think that can be part of the repair process for moments where we didn't have integrity, just calling folks and asking for their forgiveness and acknowledging that, hey, I know I said I would do this and I didn't, and building a more real relationship with folks.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said that. And you know what? Like, it's okay, right? It's okay
Yeah.
to own and acknowledge things, and I think that that's an important reflection of integrity. And it doesn't mean that you are bad or like a bad person, but
Mhm.
things happen, and we've talked about this. Life happens. I think the challenge
Yeah.
is when we don't acknowledge that, and sometimes we hold that so tightly that other narratives are created, and I just so appreciate that. Like, one real important tip about integrity is to sometimes call folks and say my bad.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I think conversely, then I would say on the other side, if there's any ways for folks, like you're saying, with grace and gentleness, on the other side, if you find yourself needing to lead someone forgiveness, like maybe if I don't know all the relationship dynamics, but being able to be more giving possibly with forgiveness, and just understanding that our humanity is real in society and things can happen. And if folks want to repair the harm, being willing to dialogue with that to repair the harm and offer forgiveness to continue the relationships. I think all this is grounded in the importance of relationships and community and coalition building. And that's where our real power is at, with connected with one another. And we will all make mistakes, and that's all right.
Yeah, that's the why, right? Like, why are we even talking about integrity? It's like we're having a bigger conversation about the relational nature of humans, how that
Mm-hmm.
shows up in community, and why it's so important to be
Exactly.
aware of the ways in which you're showing up, and then to be committed to showing
Yep.
up in a way that reflects what you need, but reflects what serves community at the same time. I think that's just such
Yeah.
an important note to kind of end on. That's the why.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Jerome, it's kind of late over here. It's really late over here. It's not so late over there. But I want to thank you so much
My
for
pleasure,
coming
brother.
through. I'm so glad this worked out. Can't wait
Yeah.
to, once post COVID, we can kick it, chop it up, and do that whole thing. Um,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
but yeah, Sherry, any last words? Any last thank yous for Mr. Jerome?
I just can't believe we got a Jordan Jerome Harrison
Oh
original
my
freestyle. Uh,
goodness.
Man,
Off the dome,
I
off the
feel
top.
confident that like not many folks have gotten that.
Not at
Um,
all.
and so I just truly
Love
a
it.
blessing. I feel really special. This whole conversation has really been wonderful. So
Yeah.
thank you for not only showing up here, but showing up in all the ways that you do to help folks think and process and learn. And thank you for your commitment to learning and sharing that with us. You're awesome. This is only the beginning of many conversations.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
hope
For
that you
sure.
continue to come back because we're gonna keep on streaming.
Please, no, I'm a fan. So whatever I can do to help amplify, share, support in both y'all's personal and collective visions, consider me a co-conspirator in y'all's work. So whatever I can do, let me know.
Jordan, I mean, listen, like you
My
said, you
pleasure.
fam now. Listen, come as often as you like, come as few times as you like, stay as long as you like, stay as short as you like. That is our welcome to all our people. But again, thank you so much for coming. I'm gonna take you.